Donald Trump retreated again today. Donald Trump never announced his full retreat of National Guard troops from the streets of American cities. But as we reported last night, Donald Trump no longer has a single member of the National Guard patrolling a single street in America. That full and humiliating retreat came before Donald Trump sent his so-called border czar, Tom Homan, to Minneapolis to manage the Trump retreat from Minneapolis, which Tom Homan announced on his first full week in that city 3 weeks ago. And today, Tom Homan made the announcement that everyone in Minneapolis and most people in the country have been waiting for.
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude.
Donald Trump is not the first president to launch an unwinnable war. Presidents have been doing that with disturbing regularity since Vietnam. Donald Trump is the first president to launch an unwinnable war in the United States against the people of the United States, people who then used the rights granted to them in the Constitution to rise up and protest against Donald Trump's war. And the protesters won. The protesters faced a unique challenge in getting through to Donald Trump and forcing him to retreat. They had to change the mind of a man who has no connection to reality, no comprehension of the Constitution, and no basic human decency. A man who is surrounded by the most incompetent, ignorant, and amoral cabinet and advisors in the history of the American presidency. A group that on any given day is capable of saying things that no one who ever emerged from the Senate confirmation process in our history could have possibly said before the weakest Republican Senate in history decided to confirm Donald Trump's cabinet. Today's winner of the daily competition for most perverse thing said by a Trump cabinet member said, and these are the exact words, quote, "I'm not scared of a germ, you know. I used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats." Unfortunately, guessing who said that about germs and cocaine and toilet seats is easier than it should be.
I'm not scared of a germ. You know, I used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats.
Yes, that is Donald Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services telling us why we shouldn't be afraid of communicable diseases, at least the ones he didn't get from toilet seats. It would be nice if we could regard something like that as funny. But he is the sociopath who deliberately steered people to their deaths with his opposition to vaccines, the single greatest advance in the history of medicine. Donald Trump has found more ways to kill more people during peacetime than any president in history. He appoints a madman to be the Secretary of Health. And then with Elon Musk's guidance, Donald Trump takes food away from people in the middle of famine in Africa. He took HIV medicine away from people who needed to survive, medicine that was being delivered in Africa thanks to the initiative of Republican President George W. Bush. Donald Trump said, no, we don't want to save those lives. The food was already in transit to those starving people, and Donald Trump became the first president in history to deny food to starving people. The United States of America has been helping people for 200 years in famine until Donald Trump said, let them die. Let them starve to death. Because Elon Musk wanted them to. The world's richest man killing the world's poorest children. And so, how does a protester on the streets of Minneapolis get through the heartless depravity that defines Donald Trump and surrounds Donald Trump? Video recordings proved Renee Good and Alex Preddy were murdered in Minneapolis by Donald Trump's invasion forces. And that made Donald Trump's invasion of Minneapolis ultimately politically untenable for him, as his poll numbers found new lows every week. And so after 2 murders, Donald Trump orders his invasion forces into retreat.
A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue to the next week. A small footprint of personnel will remain for a period of time to close out and transition full command and control back to the field office.
After Donald Trump's full retreat announced today, Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz said this.
Minnesotans never wavered. And for that, I will be forever grateful. I think it's probably safe to say the rest of the country will be forever grateful because they showed what it means to stand up for what's right, to stand up for the true principles of this country, to stand with the Constitution, and to stand with human decency. And so I want to note that the announcement today by Mr. Holman, we are cautiously optimistic, as we've said, and that this surge of untrained, aggressive federal agents are going to leave Minnesota. And I guess they'll go wherever they're going to go. But the fact of the matter is, they left us with deep damage, generational trauma. They left us with economic ruin in some cases. They left us with many unanswered questions. Where are our children? Where and what is the process of the investigations into those that were responsible for the deaths of Renee and Alex?
This evening, the mayor of Minneapolis told Chris Hayes that the credit for driving Donald Trump out of Minneapolis belongs to the people of Minneapolis.
It is a great relief, and the people that deserve the credit are the residents of Minneapolis. It's the 435,000 people. It's the tens of thousands of people that have been protesting peacefully in the streets, that have been standing up for their neighbors, getting groceries to people that are terrified to go outside. And I'm sure there's going to be relief. I think what you saw is you saw a federal government and an administration that thought that they were going to break the people of Minneapolis down. They thought that we were going to back down and sort of kowtow to whatever it is that they were looking to get done, not just locally in Minneapolis, but nationwide. They were looking to implement a national agenda based on coercing us to change local policy. And here's the thing, we didn't. The people of Minneapolis stood up. They stood up for their neighbors. They loved on each other. And I think that's the kind of patriotism that is ultimately going to get us through this.
Our first guest tonight, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, who is in charge of the homicide investigations of the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, said this.
If the federal government is really ending this occupation, the reason is that Minnesotans resisted in countless nonviolent ways. This community continues to show inspirational energy and strength in caring for neighbors. Our immigrant community has demonstrated incredible courage. To the people of Hennepin County, you are owed a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid for showing the federal government and the nation just how much you care for your neighbors and for democracy.
Donald Trump is in retreat again. Donald Trump has retreated from his National Guard deployment in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump retreated from his ICE invasion force in Chicago. Donald Trump retreated from his deployment of National Guard and ICE invasion forces in Los Angeles. And now Donald Trump has retreated from Minneapolis. And maybe this time Donald Trump has learned a lesson. Not a lesson in humanity, not a lesson in the Constitution, not a lesson in the First Amendment right to protest, but a lesson in what happens to his polls as his invasion forces continue their obviously and now provably deliberate homicidal cruelty. Where human beings have a conscience, Donald Trump has poll numbers. And his poll numbers are telling him never again. His poll numbers are telling him do not pick another American city to attack. Do not send your murderous forces on another invasion of another American city. That's what Donald Trump's poll numbers are telling him tonight. Rand Paul is the only Republican member of the Senate with real libertarian leanings. Others claim to be libertarians, But they are lying because they have no problem with Americans being murdered in the streets by federal agents for absolutely no reason. Rand Paul is the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, which makes him the only Republican in a position of power in the Congress who is willing to confront the current head of ICE and other Trump officials in a hearing today, as he did over the killing of Alex Preddy.
I mean, he's standing up, he's trying to protect his eyes, but he's still back filming and on the back of his heels. At no time in the encounter, we've gone forward a couple of seconds, do you see him try to strike an officer, nor does he brandish a weapon, which was alleged as well. And so we're going through this, and it's like, you know, they will say, oh, he's, you know, resisting at some point. I don't see any resistance, but it's kind of hard to tell when you have 6 people on you and you're moving, are you resisting? I mean, anybody is, the natural instinct is when 6 people are on top of you, you're going to be trying to move. You're not going to be placid, particularly after they've sprayed him several times. But I see nothing here. I mean, not even a hint of something that was aggressive on his part. Everything was retreat. He's over in the street. He retreats. The woman is pushed to the ground. He tries to assist the woman to get up. He's violently sprayed, and it just continues. And so I don't think this should take months and months and years and years. There needs to be a conclusion. You want to calm things down. I think Tom Homan being there and now saying we're going to reduce this presence in the street is a good sign and a good step forward. And I'm glad that's happening. I think that is de-escalation, true de-escalation in a diplomatic way. But we need to have answers here, and there needs to be an announcement. These are the new policies. This is how we're going to interact with the public, because the public needs to know too. You know, if I go to a protest and I shout something at people, could I be killed?
Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison was also a witness at that hearing.
The government has said the purpose of the surge is to fight fraud in government programs. Well, of course, I hate fraud, and my office and I are already fighting it. We've convicted 300 people of Medicaid fraudsters in the last 7 years. The government did not surge, however, forensic accountants to Minnesota. They didn't surge computer experts. Instead, they sent 3,000 masked, armed men who are now kicking in doors, demanding papers, killing Minnesotans, not fighting fraud. The surge has hurt the fight against fraud. Because of it, a wave of experienced prosecutors have left the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota, and the remaining staff are now drowning in a flood of habeas corpus petitions. The government has also said that the purpose of the surge was to fight violent crime and rid our streets of the worst of the worst. And yet violent crime rates in Minneapolis were falling before the surge. Furthermore, ICE's own data shows that 77% of those it has detained in Minnesota have no criminal record at all. Notoriously, some of those detained have been children. Is 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos the worst of the worst, or 10-year-old Elizabeth Zunia Castaguano? The surge is contributing to violent crime, members. It's contributing to violent crime. 2 of the 3 homicides committed in Minneapolis in 2026 have come at the hands of federal immigration agents.
In a House hearing last week, Border Patrol agent Charles Exum was, in effect, unmasked for his shooting of Montessori school teacher Miramar Martinez after he attempted to kill her by firing 5 shots at her. He was delighted to discover that his 5 shots had created 7 bullet wounds in her body because of the exit wounds.
It's disgusting, shameful, and it gets worse. Ms. Martinez, these are images of texts sent by the agent who shot you. And they're actually disturbing to read, but I think it's important for the public to see this. The agent linked an article about your shooting and texted, "Read it. 5 shots, 7 holes. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys." Oh, well, it is what it is. Happens. This is someone that works for the United States government. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Now, he was talking about you And it's our understanding that he was actually bragging about his aim, shooting an unarmed American citizen. Is that right?
Correct.
Miramar Martinez's attorney will join us tonight with newly released body cam video that proves Charles Exum was deliberately slamming his car into her car. Video that proves that Miramar Martinez did absolutely nothing to threaten an out-of-control carload of Donald Trump's invasion forces with their fingers on the triggers as they were riding through the streets of Chicago before one of them opened fire on Miramar Martinez. The Chicago Sun-Times reports on text messages that Charles Exum wrote after he tried to kill Miramar Martinez for no reason, saying that he was praised big time by all of his commanders, including the now disgraced and demoted Gregory Bovino, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and as Exum put it in a text, El Jefe himself. It doesn't get more perverse than the bigoted man who issued an executive order last year making English the official language of the United States, a man who professes a hatred of everything south of our southern border, would be referred to by one of his gleefully homicidal agents who tried to murder an American citizen for no other reason than what appeared to him to be her Latina heritage. It simply could not be more perverse that that shooter would refer to that president as El Jefe. A text that Charles Exum received said, quote, "You are a legend among agents. You better effing know that." And tragically tonight, we have no reason to believe he is not a legend among agents. He should be a pariah among agents. He should be condemned by other agents. But if he is a legend among agents, then all of our worst suspicions about the murderous nature of Donald Trump's invasion forces would be sadly proven true. Alex Preddy's parents have given an interview to the New York Times, which reports, quote, Alex Preddy's parents keep a box crammed with 200 letters and cards that have poured into their suburban Denver home since their 37-year-old son was shot and killed by immigration agents last month in Minneapolis. Some are from healthcare workers and veterans praising Mr. Preddy's work as an intensive care nurse at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Others are from strangers who hail Mr. Preddy as a hero for his final actions when he tried to help a woman shoved to the ground by a Customs and Border Protection agent, only to be tackled and shot multiple times. There's probably 10 more in the mailbox today, Mr. Preddy's father, Michael, said, as he and his wife Susan held hands and talked about memories of their son and the nightmare of anger, grief, and unanswered questions they have faced since his killing on January 24th. He's my firstborn, Susan Preddy said. He's the one that made me a mother. There was no reason he should have died that day. Rand Paul is right. Alex Preddy